Hi, this is PG of PG's Lumacy. In this tutorial, we will be making a Captain America figure. The bands that we will be needing for this project will be red, white, and blue. And for the face, we will be using skin-toned bands. Rainbow Loom has come up with a multi-pack containing 3 skin tones, and you can get that from their website at rainbowloom.com. We will use the loom in its standard offset configuration, which means that the pins will be staggered, and we will use it with the arrow pointing downwards. Let's start off by making the piece for the arm, and unless otherwise specified, we will be using double bands for much of this project. For the arm, we start with 2 blue bands on the top center pins. And then on the top side pin, we put another 2 bands. And then we place double bands next to this, and then another blue double bands. For the gloved hands, we will use red double bands and another red double bands. And then we will cap this with a single band wrapped 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. This is the layout for the arm, and now we are ready to loop it. You go into this cap band or capping band and grab the double bands underneath, get them out of the pin and loop forward. Then loop the rest of the bands. Now when you get to this band, instead of looping it to this pin, we will loop it to this pin. So we grab it from underneath, get it out of the pin, and then loop it onto this pin. And now we will loop these top bands. And this is how your layout will look like after you have looped the pieces for the arms. Grab a toothpick and secure the top loops. And then pull the entire piece off the loom. And this will form your piece for the arm. Okay, and you will need 2 of these pieces, so you will have to make another one. Let us now work on the main body. Like I said, we will be using double bands for much of this project, and pay attention to the color of bands that we will be placing at each row. First, there will be the blue double bands on the topmost pins, and then on the side we will place diagonal bands from this pin to that pin, and do that again on the other side. Next, we will add a row of flesh colored bands, double bands. Then we place flesh colored bands on the center pins, and on the side we will place diagonal flesh colored bands on one side, and we will also do that on the other side. This will form the chin for our figure. Now for the neck, we use blue double bands. For the shoulder area, we will be using one blue band and one white band for one side, and then we will do that again for the other side. One blue and one white band, just to add some detail to the shoulder area. Now let us place a row of blue double bands and for the next row we will be placing one red band and one white band put together. So let's place that. And next we will place another row of blue double bands. And another row of blue double bands. For the legs, we will place double blue bands. One and two on one side, and then let's do that again on the other side. And finally, we add the boot. We will be using red double bands for that. And let's do that again on the other side. To form the lower part of the boots, we will be using this pair of unused pins in the bottom. We will place double red bands or two red bands, and then we will cap that with a single band wrapped 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. Grab your hook and loop the double bands. Hold on to the capping band and then loop the double bands, and then get the piece off the loom and move it to this pin. That will form the capping band for the leg and also the lower part of the boot. Let's do that again for this other side. 2 red bands, a capping band wrapped 3 times. 1, 2, 3. We loop it. Get it off the pins and then move it to this bottom pin. This is how the layout will look like for the main body, and you might want to pause the video and check to see if you have the same layout. Before we loop the bands, let us add the arm pieces that we made earlier. And we will attach them to these pins on either side of the figure. Let's start with one of the sides. Okay. You may want to use the hook for this. Get the loops on one of the pins and then the other set of loops on the other pin. Let's do that on the other side. I want to turn the loom around. Be careful to pull out the toothpick using the hook to get the loops. Okay, there you have the arm pieces in place. Now you may notice, if you've done the basic action figure tutorial, that this is a modification of that design. I just realized that this makes for a more muscular look, especially on our superheroes. We need to add horizontal bands to hold our piece together and also to define the shape. And we will be placing a single flesh-colored band on these pins, and we will be using a double looped single band. So to make a double loop band, you twist a band to form an 8, and then you fold it to itself, and that forms a double loop, and then you put it in place. Let's do that again. We need another double looped flesh-colored band on these pins. So twist, fold, and put in place. Now for this section over here, we will be placing a single band so that we will have a wider chest area. And then to form the taper on the body, for these pins, we will be using double looped bands, and we will be using blue for that. So twist, fold, and place. Use a hook if it gets harder to pull or stretch. Okay, lastly, okay, so our horizontal bands are a double loop band, a double loop band, single band, a double loop band, and a double loop band. For the eyes, I will be using seed beads, and I will be using this size of seed beads. I get them in packs like this from my craft store. And if you cannot find seed beads, or you did not want to buy seed beads for these projects, you could just use a different technique for the eyes, and you will find several tutorials online for how to make eyes on these figures. Now we need to string these beads with this flesh-colored single band, and to do that we will be using a floss, a piece of floss, and in my case I use a floss that's reinforced on one tip or one end. You get this for dental bridges and braces. You insert the reinforced end into the hole on the bead, and then let's try it with 2 at a time. We place the 2 beads into the floss, and then we thread the floss into the band, and then reinsert the end into the beads. And when you pull, the band, it will go into the beads easily, and then you could just pull out the floss and you have your beads on the band, and you will place that on these pins in the face area. That will form the eyes for our figure. Okay, now we are ready to loop the bands, starting from the bottom. Okay, you go into the capping band or the boot part, and then loop forward. Okay, let's do that again on this other side. Now let us loop these bands forward. Go into the horizontal band, and then grab the double bands underneath and loop forward. Now, if you have a star bead like this, which you can get from the craft store, you may want to add it to this section of the figure. So to do that, you grab one of the double bands, and then you loop it forward. And then you grab a fine crochet hook, and you insert the crochet hook into the star bead, and then you grab the band underneath. Okay, and then you get the band out of the bead, the star bead, and then loop it to this pin on the top. So that will secure the star bead in place. But if you don't have a star bead, you could just skip that step and then just loop this pair of bands forward as you did with the other bands. But it would look nice for a star to be on the figure if you had one. Okay, so let's loop these bands this time. And then we loop the shoulder bands. Then the neck band. Okay. Now for these diagonal bands, you loop the one that's on top, and in this case it would be this pair of bands. So you grab this pair of bands and then loop to the forward pin. And you know that you got the right bands if you have this neat teardrop shape that is formed when you loop it. And grab the next one, next pair, and you loop. You see, we get the neat teardrop shape. Okay, now let's work on these bands. And the one in the center. Okay. Then we are looking for these bands, the diagonal bands up top. Do that on this other side, looking for this band over here. And then this one in the middle, we loop up top. Okay, so this is how the layout will look like after you have looped the bands. Now we grab a single blue band and go into all these loops up top, and then get that single band into those loops. Form a knot to secure the top loops, and then we will be ready to pull our piece off the loom. For heavy layers of bands, I would use a hook to pry them out of the pin so that they don't break. They're not stretched too much this way. And then just stretch the bands out. Get the star in there. Use a pair of tweezers to fine-tune the shape. Now let us work on some of the details on our figure. First of all, let's work on the arms. If you look at the arms, they look a bit unnatural because they're too wide in this area. So to solve that, we will gather these bands together and get a single band, and we will loop it 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. And we will move that into position so it will be at the base of this biceps over here, and it will look more natural. See, this is the one with the loop band, this is the one without it, so you will see that this looks more natural. So let's do that on the other side. Grab a single band and loop it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. and put it in place. There you go. Now let's add cuffs to the gloves on the hand. Get a single band and loop it twice. 1, 2, and then just gently put it in place, and it will form a cuff on the glove. Loop it twice. Okay. And for the boots, we will place 2 single bands that we will loop twice. 1, 2, and then another one. 1, 2. And then we will just put that in place over the top portion of the boot to form the cuff on the boots. Let's do that for the other boot. You will loop it twice. 1, 2, and then just gently put it in place. Okay, and it will appear like cuffs on the boot. Okay, then you put some angle on the bottom part of the boot so that it looks like the front part of the boot. Okay, basically you're folding this section over here, form an angle. Okay, let's put a belt. You will need a white band for the belt, and for the belt you can use your hook to go. See this row of bands over here? Okay, we will string this white band into these bands over here. So just alternate and go in and out, in and out, in and out. Okay. And then grab your single band, then pull in. Make sure it doesn't get out the other way, the other end. Okay, just stretch it out a bit, and then go to the back side. You grab a C-clip. Okay, get one end. And then grab the other end and then secure it with a C-clip. There you go. That forms the belt. And also tapers the figure even more. Okay, that forms the belt. For the mask, we will be using blue bands to match the blue on the figure. And for starters, we're going to place blue bands on the sides of the head. And I want you to remember these bands, these peach colored bands, this one and this one, because I will be referring to them as I show you this technique. Okay, for starters, let us go into the neck bands and insert our hook. And you will notice that I'm using a finer crochet hook for this, just for a finer detail. You grab a single blue band and get it into the neck bands. And you will form two loops, a front loop and a back loop. Now you get your hook into the back loop, and then you get your hook into this band. Remember the bands I told you to remember? And then you grab the front loop. So you will have three loops on your hook. The front loop, the loop from the face, and the back loop. Now you grab another single blue band, and then you get that band into the loops on your hook, and you will form two new loops, a front loop and a back loop. So you get your hook into the back loop, and then into this band over here. Remember those bands that I showed you? And into the front loop. Okay? And then you grab another single band and you put that band into your loops. So you have a new set of loops again. Okay? So you grab the back loop, and this time you grab these bands on top of the head, these blue bands. I'm grabbing two of them, and then I grab my front loop, and that takes me all the way to the top of the head. And I will use this same band that we used to secure the figure, and I will get it into my loops. Okay. If it snaps off, just grab the loops again. And then we're getting this band up top into those loops to secure them. Okay. And you may want to get this top band into one or two of the bands in the back to secure them more firmly. There you go. And we have placed the bands on the sides, on this side of the head. Okay, and we will do that on the other side as well. Okay, let's work on the other side. I'm working with my figure upside down. Okay, let's go into the neck bands again. Grab a single band, get it into the neck bands, forming a back loop and a front loop. I grab the back loop, I grab the band from the side of the face, and then I grab the front loop. Now I grab another single band and get it into the loops on my hook, and I form two new loops. I grab the back loop, I grab this band, and then I grab the front loop, and I get another single band and get it into those loops, forming a new pair of loops. Oops, let's get that in. Okay, so you have a new set of loops. Then you grab the back loop. You see that I am sort of pinching it so it doesn't slip off again. I grab the back loop. I grab 2 of the bands from the top blue bands, and then I grab the front loop, taking me all the way to the top. Okay, now remember this band that is securing the bands on the figure. I use the same band. I get it into my loops, and it gathers all the bands up top. I let go of that loop and then get that loop into the bands on the back just to secure it more firmly. And there you have it. We have placed the bands on both sides of the head, and we get our mask, at least the side part of it. Now let us work on the part of the mask that goes over the eyes. Now for the part of the mask that goes over the eyes, using my fine crochet hook, I go into this space between the eyes and go all the way to the back. Okay. And then I grab a single band and I pull that band into the head, out the front part of the head, and I get my loop on the front side of the face. Okay, now I grab 2 single bands and I stretch them out a bit to make them more manageable. Being careful not to break them. And then I get these 2 bands into the loop that we made on the face. So now my 2 bands are here. I pull on the other end of the band that we placed into the head, and we get our mask. Okay. Now I grab a single band and I get that single band into one of the ends or one of the loops, the pair of loops. I form a knot. Don't pull on this too tightly or it will twist your mask. Just about right to hold it, but not too much. And then I pull the end of the band into these bands on the side. Okay. Now what I do is I twist my bands to form a figure 8. You see that? I formed a figure 8 with my bands. And now I will secure this other end. I'm using another single band. Get my hook into the loops. Get my single band into the loops and then form a knot. Okay, don't pull on the knot too tightly. Just enough to hold it. And then you get the end of this band into the bands on the head. Okay. So now we have 3 loops that are not secured. This loop from the mask we will just secure with the loop that is going into the head. So we will secure that part, and then we'll secure this. Okay, and then we will grab the, remember this band that we used to secure all the top pieces? We also grab it and get it into this piece over here. Okay. And then again we reinsert this into, or loop it into these bands on the top of the head, and that will secure those bands. Okay, let's fix our mask. Let's just even out our figure 8. And then pull from the back. And you have your mask for Captain America. Just fine-tune the shapes. And there you have Captain America made on the Rainbow Loom.